What's going on, everyone? I'm John the Zaz of the Hobbyist PCs community. Welcome, my friends. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a walkthrough of a website that I personally love to utilize called PCPartPicker.com. I'll be sure to include a link in the description down for you guys so that way you guys can go check it out yourselves. But why don't we go ahead and just get right into it. I'll try to keep it as simple as I can, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll figure out how you can utilize it to fit your needs. So let's jump right in. Here we are, PCPartPicker.com. This is a page you'll be greeted with, and you have a large amount of options to choose from as far as how you want to start planning out your build. Now, this website is one of my favorite tools to utilize whenever I am planning out a build, even if I already have a good idea as to what it is I want to purchase or what I want to put in my system. It's sometimes good to come here for a variety of different reasons, and we're going to go over a bunch of these as we go through it. I want to bring your attention first to some of the different options that you have to choose as far as your tools, and we'll go over them in more detail in a second. But you've got a system builder, which is where you would go to put together your parts list. You've got a various assortment of build guides that were made either by people on the website or other users. Then you've got completed builds, which are basically user builds that people submitted, and basically they spoke about their experience with doing the build itself and how it performs. You can browse individual products as well, and they sort it out into different categories, which makes it really fantastic in order to see, you can do price comparisons right off of the website and all that sort of stuff. But then there are some other tools too that can really help you out, especially if you're the budget type. For one, you've got a site that's dedicated strictly to price drops. So it alerts you either within, I think it's 24 hours or within the last 7 days. It'll tell you about all the parts that dropped in price, and it just lists them there for you. So, and we'll go over some of that stuff in just a moment. But then you've also got pricing trends, which will tell you about the pricing trends over the course of a certain period of time that you can specify. You've also got your forums. You can go there and you can talk to other users on the website. And then, of course, they've got the site blog if you want to be in touch with everything going on the website itself. But the other thing that I want to bring your attention to as well is, depending on your region, you might want to pick a certain region to get their pricing. This is just a good way to help make sure that you're getting the right pricing in your region. So before you even do anything on this website, this is the first thing I would suggest. Start off with your region. I'm from the United States, so we're going to focus primarily on the United States pricing. So the system builder is one of the main things on this website that tends to attract a lot of people here. But let's briefly go over what you can find on some of these other tools that they have here. First off, the pricing trends is a big one. If you're going to be putting together some kind of a build, you're going to want to make sure that if you have to plan ahead, it's a good idea to see what the market's looking like going down the road and what the pricing history might have looked like in the past to see if what you're purchasing right now is going to be the most for your money. One of the biggest culprits lately, has been RAM, but the price, as you can see, has been going down over the past 18 months. And of course, you can separate all these different types of RAM on the left-hand side here. And for example, I see a lot of people buying DDR4 3000 or 3200, and you can get a good idea as to what the pricing trends look like for that particular type of RAM over the course of the past 18 months. And that is just a great way to see if you should expect to see prices to continue dropping. If you look at the price graph and you see that it's kind of leveling out, there's a good chance that maybe the pricing is not decreasing anytime soon or even increasing. I would expect prices typically to fluctuate upwards a lot of the times, but occasionally they do go down. But when they do go down, they tend to continue down a gradual slope. So if you need to plan ahead on a particular part, you can't afford to get it right away, then maybe it would be good to consult the pricing trends. That way you can kind of plan ahead and see if maybe the price will go down. You'll end up saving money later down the road. Now, while we're talking about price trends, why don't we talk a little about the price drops section? They tend to update either the last 24 hours or the last 7 days, but this can be a good way of seeing which parts maybe you were eyeballing or which parts have a particularly good value that are dropping in price. Maybe they used to be expensive parts, now they're a lot more affordable. You can scroll down, you see you got cases, you've got if you scroll down further, you got CPUs, you got external storage, headphones. This is definitely something to consult in case a particular part that you were looking at has dropped in price. Or maybe you're not hard set on buying a particular brand. You might be more open. This might be a good place to go if you're just looking for the best price. I would suggest definitely checking out this page and then maybe end up getting something that's really good for a much lower price. We're going to kind of work our way from right to left here, and we're going to go to the Browse Products page. Of course, one of the most useful features I find with this particular section on the website is that you can basically pick a category and then you can compare the differences between different products, whether it be their price or their performance or their specs. Now, for example, I think one thing that a lot of people get hung up on is choosing between generations of CPUs. So maybe you decide, should I buy last generation CPU or should I buy current gen? There could be a number of things going on here, but let's say I wanted to choose between upgrading. Maybe I wanted to choose between going 2700X, or maybe I'm on a 1600. Maybe I just want to go to a Ryzen 1700. But they're pretty comparable, but there are differences. So now I have two selected. You can compare the selected, and you can take a look at their ratings. You can take a look at their price. The 1700 being much lower price than the 2700X, and of course it is slower. It has 0.7 gigahertz less, same cores, but if you start scrolling down some more, you can see that it has turbo frequencies. The 2700X reaching up to 4.3 gigahertz. That might be something that might influence your decision there, which would make that a pretty compelling deal. But then you can look at other things, for example, like you can look at the TDP, which is the thermal design power. That's how much power it's in terms of wattage that it's going to be consuming in order to run. You can see whether or not it includes a CPU cooler, which both of these do. So I think in this case, if you were trying to choose between the two, this might be one of the first places you go and check out. But it doesn't quite stop there. You can also choose to set price alerts on particular parts. Maybe you want to see when the 2600 drops in price. You can go ahead and select that, and then you can choose set price alert, in which case you can say, send me an email alert if the price of any CPU matching the filter criteria drops to whatever price it specifies. You want to be realistic about this. For example, the 2600X might drop in price, and it's probably realistic to expect it to drop to about 140 or 150. So maybe I'll say, hey, set it to 150, and then I'll set that, and then you can put in, you do have to make an account in order to get these alerts, but it will send you an email and let you know if the price has dropped on it. Let's move on over to the completed builds section. Here's where you see a lot of users just post their builds. They're obviously registered users on the website. This is actually a really great place to kind of see how you would price something out, or you want to get an idea as to what the build experience is like inside of a particular case, or you want to see how the parts work and sync with each other. This is a great way to kind of get user accounts. You can see that each build here has either upvotes or some kind of comment section for each one. Let's see, my first build, Intel Core i7 9700K. So this is a fairly expensive build, 1080 Ti, going for about $2,300. And now he talks about his description. Everything went well with my first build. I did a lot of research on fitting the Kraken X62 into it, but there is no actual build, as far as I know, that shows the front rad bracket flipped. So here you go. For someone who doesn't know, this might help them out. And of course, you can say also after flipping the front bracket, there's still a space to fit a 3.5-inch hard drive. That could be useful information for you if you're not sure about whether or not to buy a particular part or whether it'll fit in your case. This might answer your questions. So by all means, feel free to look through the different builds if you see someone using a particular case, and then maybe you'll end up getting the information you need. Moving on to the build guides section. Now, these aren't so much guides that show you how to actually build the PC, but they're pretty much just a breakdown of what is inside these particular pre-built parts that people have selected, and they tell you what to expect with the hardware. I wouldn't call this particularly the most useful for someone who's more experienced, but this might be very useful for someone who's just starting out and isn't really sure about what to pick up. So, you can see you get the pricing, you get the comments, so you can reference the comments on a particular build to see what people have to say about it, because sometimes it might help to get other people's perspective on what they think of the build, just to make sure that what was posted isn't something that is maybe being hyped up a little bit in terms of its quality. It'll basically tell you, like, the CPU. I'll read one of the descriptions of the parts. At this budget, we're using the AMD Ryzen 5 2600X. Added to the list is the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Black Edition, which is a pretty common cooler you can buy these days, which will perform better and more quietly than the stock cooler. Note, if you prefer to consider a similar build, but instead using an Intel processor, be sure to check out our great Intel gaming build guide. So you got a link to another build that you can check out if you want to go Intel instead of AMD. Of course, you can check around. You can see what the motherboard has to offer in terms of features, which is one of the big things you usually look for in a motherboard. If you're not overclocking, you might decide to look at VRM quality, for example, if you are an overclocker. But you can also scroll down. You can look at the part list right here. You can even get a link to it, so you can actually go to this part list. You can say customize this part list, and it'll bring you right to the system builder. So why don't we go ahead and transfer over to the system builder from here? Now, of course, we've taken that build that we just looked at, and we've got all the parts listed on the system builder itself. Now, a lot of the times I have to note when you're adding parts into the build here, it's going to give you the lowest price that it finds. It'll tell you where the pricing came from because this website searches as much of the internet as it can. So it doesn't include every single website out there. It doesn't include eBay. It doesn't always include used prices. And it doesn't actually include certain websites, older websites like Tiger Direct, for example. So keep in mind that the prices that you're seeing on the website might not necessarily reflect the pricing across the board, but it's going to prioritize the lowest price out of all the websites that it found. Let's go ahead and just get started with the parts list in general. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a fresh build, and now we're starting here from scratch. Typically, when I get started with a build, I like to start out with the CPU and the motherboard, so that, in this case, the platform. We're just going to go with like a Ryzen build for now, like a second-gen Ryzen build. So what I like to do first is I'll choose a CPU. I want to go with a Ryzen 5 2600. Now, I'm going to show you something that this thing actually does that's pretty amazing. You can see right now it says Super Biz, and that last build we took a look at, it said Amazon. You can actually specify with the particular CPU which pricing that you want to list on there, or you can actually go to the website from there. So that's one thing you could also do. If you want to check out the website, you can simply just click on it right there, and then it'll bring you right to the page, and you can look over what the pricing looks like. So if you got an Amazon Prime account, you get some kind of a discount, that might help you out. Heading back to the information page, this is just the information about the product itself. You can scroll down and take a look at its pricing history. You can also set an email alert in case you want to see when the price drops on the part. You can also get comments and reviews on a particular piece of hardware here as well. If you're the type that likes to look over reviews before you buy something, by all means, look through this section first before you do it. If anything, I would tell anyone that's buying a part, look through reviews and take seriously the ones that give you the most information. I'll do a video on reviews some other time later, but when you're reading reviews, please make sure that you're getting useful information out of it before deciding that something is good or bad based on an underinformed review. Heading back to the parts list, I'm going to skip the CPU cooler for a reason. We're just going to go straight to the motherboard. I'm going to show you something. For now, we're just going to go with a fairly cheap motherboard. I think we're going to go with the ASRock B450 Pro 4. We're just going to add that to the list, and you can see right now it's saying no issues or incompatibilities found. So we're going to go back to the CPU. We're actually going to pick a different CPU. Why don't we go with the 1700X? It's an older generation. It should be compatible with the motherboard, but you can see right now, warning, these parts have potential issues or incompatibilities. See details below. We'll click this link to go down below, and you can see that right now it says, warning, AMD Ryzen 7 1700X does not include a stock CPU cooler. Adding a CPU cooler to your parts list is recommended. So I wanted to note this because this doesn't just tell you what the price of everything is going to be. It's going to tell you whether or not the particular part that you're buying is actually compatible or has things that you may or may not need to buy in your build. So if you're buying something and you're not sure about whether or not it's going to fit in your case or if it's going to actually work with the particular hardware that you're buying, maybe you're not aware that you can't use an Intel CPU on an AMD motherboard, it will tell you that. This way you don't end up making a catastrophic mistake in your purchasing decisions. Just keep that in mind as you're putting together your build. All right, I've put the 2600X back into the build. We're going to scroll down and head down to memory next. Now from here, you're not restricted to just going to the browse products page to compare different products. You can actually do it right from here. So once you go in and you choose memory and you want to add it to your build, you can go down. Maybe you're not sure whether or not you want to go with Corsair Vengeance LPX or if you want to go with G-Skill Aegis. They're both the same rating. They're both 288 pin. They're both 16 gig in comparison, but one is lower in price compared to the other. Maybe you just want to see if there's a particular spec that's different between them that might separate the two of them. You can go ahead and click the two, and you can look between them to see what sort of value you're getting with your price per gigabyte, in which case you're getting more value from the Aegis than you are from the Corsair Vengeance LPX. But you can also see there's a difference in RAM timings. So right now, I know that its cast latency is actually faster on the Corsair Vengeance LPX, which cast latency is a pretty big influential factor when it comes to speed. Even though this has just a 1 millisecond difference in terms of latency, this might add up if you're, for example, a competitive gamer that wants to get the most performance possible. This might be an influential decision. Whether or not you actually value that sort of performance increase just for, an extra $1 per gigabyte is up to you. But if you needed to make that sort of decision, this might be something that influences your decision in the long run. So this is something that you should probably consider if you're not sure about choosing between two parts. All right, I decided to add the G-Skill Aegis onto this, but we're going to go ahead and move on to storage next. Now, I want to show you a neat little feature. When you're looking through storage, there's a lot of different types of storage, and it can be really overwhelming to sit here and scroll through everything and to just find what you want. I want to show you that there are some great filtering features on the left-hand side here, which, by the way, you can also access these features on mobile. This website is very very usable on mobile. It's slightly clunkier to use just because, you're on a smaller screen, but it's all these features are there. For example, like maybe you have a limited budget and you kind of just want to go with your best option for around, I don't know, like let's say you're willing to spend no more than $100 on storage. So we can filter everything down between $0 and $100, and it'll show you all of your options, and it'll even let you sort them. So you can click right here to sort from lowest to highest, or you can go from highest to lowest. If you wanted to get the most for your money, you might want to sort it from highest to lowest and see what your options are in terms of getting the best bang for your buck. For example, you can get a 4 terabyte Seagate here. It's a slow hard drive, but if you're prioritizing storage over anything else, then you might consider this a good deal. Personally, I don't. I'd rather get faster storage and maybe just get a little less storage in that case, but this really depends on your situation at the end of the day. But there are more ways to filter things out. You don't just have price to choose from. You can also choose rating. You can choose the specific manufacturer. You can also choose the capacity. And furthermore, you can choose between whether or not it's an SSD, a regular hard drive, the hard drive speed. You can also choose different factors like its transfer speed, whether it's an M.2 or if it's an NVMe. You have a lot of different ways to go about sorting these different things out. Now, in this case, maybe I just want to find a Western Digital, and then maybe I just want to find an SSD in this case. So what I want to do is filter a Western Digital, then I want to go SSD, and maybe I'm not particularly picky about whether or not it's an M.2. I can scroll through that, but if I wanted to get an M.2, I'll just go down here and I'll choose an M.2. I'm not too happy with 250 gigabytes, so maybe we could choose a different M.2. Let's go BM, see what we got there. We got some more options, so I think I'm just going to go with the 500 gigabyte for now. We'll add that onto the list. And then we're on to the video cards. This is typically where a lot of people are kind of unsure about what to pick up, because if you're a gamer especially, your graphics card is going to be one of your biggest influential factors in performance here. A lot of times with graphics cards, you got multiple manufacturers. You can filter things down with the website and find out what the best price is, but a lot of times I'll typically tell people, just find what you would consider to be the best value in terms of your price and in terms of your average performance. I would use this as a starting point to see what's available. So maybe you're torn between different 2070s, for example, an RTX 2070. That's just the first thing that came to my mind. And you're kind of torn between Gigabyte and Asus, for example. These are both, fairly similar in price, the Gigabyte being a little lower. You can go ahead and compare the selected. From here, you can look at the different clock speeds. You can see that the Asus is actually clocked a little lower, but this has a boost clock, so it boosts up to 1.845, whereas this doesn't seem to have a boost clock. That might be a typo. I'm pretty sure these do have boost clock capabilities, but this is why I would say don't really rely on this website for deciding on a graphics card. I would suggest reading reviews. Some other things too to note, you can see that this has 3 display ports and 1 HDMI. That might be a problem for you, whereas the Asus has 2 HDMI slots and 2 display ports. So if you only have HDMI monitors and you have dual HDMI monitors, you might want to go with the Asus over the Gigabyte in this instance. But if you don't really care whether or not it has DisplayPort or HDMI, and that's not an issue to you, you might be the type that wants to get the most value for your money. You might decide to go Gigabyte instead. For now, I'm going to go with the Asus 2070, and we'll just move on from there. Next, we got the case, and this is where compatibility gets a little bit interesting. We're going to choose a case, and what it's actually going to do is it's only going to show you cases. If you've gotten to this point in the same order that I have, it's only going to show you cases that will fit with your motherboard. You can, of course, tell it to filter out anything that, doesn't necessarily conform to what your particular build is. For example, I choose Mini ITX Desktop. You can see that nothing shows up. This is because it's compatibility checker. It only shows you what's compatible based on what you've already picked. So even if you wanted to, you couldn't pick the wrong case for your build. I'm just going to go ahead and just pick my favorite case right now, the Fractal Define Meshify C. But this is something that I wanted to show you, is that it'll continue to filter things out based on what you pick. So this is kind of why I choose the CPU and the platform first, because that's going to influence how your search goes, and it just continues to filter things down to make it so you don't have to look quite as hard for something or make harder decisions moving down, especially if you don't know what it is you're looking for. Then of course we get down to the power supply. Here's the thing about, I'm gonna be releasing a video on power supplies pretty soon. I'm currently researching some stuff. This website actually has an estimated wattage right above it. Don't take this estimated wattage as being how much of a power supply you need. I'll get into this more in the other video, but you typically want to use this as a reference point and assume that it's going to use more power than that. I would assume if I was looking at 274 watts with all these parts in total, I'm just going to make a safe estimation and assume that you might need about a 450 or a 500 watt power supply. Nowadays, 450 watts is sufficient for most builds, even some enthusiast builds. I would recommend getting a little bit higher than that just in case. You can go ahead and you can choose your power supply and it'll show you based on your wattage recommendation whether or not you'd want to go to a certain power supply. I would even think that it doesn't show you anything lower than what the rated power supply is on the compatibility checker. So, when you're picking your power supply, you kind of have to decide between a few things, how much wattage you want or think you need, and then whether or not you want it to be modular. You can even go through and you can filter it based on whether or not it's has a certain efficiency rating. I like to get 80 plus gold personally, but I also might want to choose an ATX power supply. I might also want to choose like a full modular or a semi-modular power supply. This entirely depends on what you're trying to do with the build. So just make use of the filters when you're picking out your power supply and you should be good to go after that. I ended up going with an EVGA Supernova G3 550 watt power supply, 80 plus gold. I probably could have went with a bronze, would have been just fine. But from here, you can choose to add different accessories. You can add a monitor into the mix. You can add your operating system. You can add optical drives. You can even add a custom link from another website if you don't see the part you're looking for listed on here. This is in case, maybe you wanted to add things like capture cards or stuff like that, and you just weren't really sure how it was going to factor into the price. Because as you can see down below here, it shows you the total price. It shows you the shipping, and it also shows you the mail-in rebate prices too. Then, of course, you got promo discounts. It includes all these different things. So you can see that right off of the bat, this is like an $1,100, $1,200 build. It'll perform pretty well. But its actual total price is based after shipping as well as mail-in rebates. So keep in mind that with mail-in rebates, when you buy parts, you're going to be paying full price for the part at the start, but then after you mail in your rebate, you'll get the money back later. You do have to mail them in quickly, so make sure you keep that stuff in mind when you're factoring in rebates. You might have a very limited time window to mail that in. Make sure your parts work, get them as soon as you can, and then be sure to mail those rebates out really quick. And lastly, I kind of want to show you some other things too. You can see that it has some compatibility notes in regards to this build. You can see, note, the motherboard M.2 slot number 2 shares bandwidth with SATA 6.0 gigabyte ports. When the M.2 slot is populated, 2 SATA 6.0 gigabyte ports are disabled, which means that you won't be able to use those particular ports on the motherboard. So if you wanted to expand to some more storage, you simply wouldn't have all of those particular SATA ports enabled on that motherboard. So you're going to want to make absolutely sure that if you plan to expand later in the future, that motherboard provides exactly what you need it to. But that's the beauty of this website. It tells you those things ahead of time. Then on top of that, you got some physical dimension restrictions cannot yet be automatically checked, such as a CPU cooler RAM clearance with modules and tall heat spreaders that might be actually referring to the Asus Gigabyte. This is a 3-fan graphics card, and depending on what you put inside of the case, this graphics card may or may not fit in it. I can tell you from personal experience with the Fractal Meshify C, for example, that I have a front-mounted cooler on it, and if I tried to put a 3-fan GPU inside of this case, it would not fit. So this is kind of what it's alluding to right here, is that you might have some kind of obstacle to contend with when you're building your PC. So you want to keep this in mind as you're looking through the parts. And there's one other thing that I want to note about this particular website that's amazing, is that it actually utilizes cookies. So if you actually happen to accidentally close out the page, you don't even have to have a registered account with it. So if you happen to accidentally close out the browser, you can just go ahead, I'll close it out. We'll head to PCPartPicker. And if we go to the system builder, my entire build is still there. It does utilize cookies. If you don't like having your information saved like that, you know, this might not apply to you. But if you're the type that tends to accidentally close windows like I do all the time, this is a beautiful thing. So this is just a feature I wanted to highlight. But if you're done with your build and you want to share it with someone, you have a link to it right here. It makes a custom link. Any part that I change, you go ahead, you can click this right here. You can copy it, and then you can just send it to all your friends, and your friends will see this build as is. And to make this even more interesting, if I were to paste this link right in here, right now, I can't do anything with this, but you can go in here and you can actually edit it. It says you get the option to edit this part list, and then you can start making changes to it. Then after you've made some changes, maybe I decide I want to add a cooler to it. Let's just throw the 212 Evo into here. You can see that the link changes, and now you can copy that and you can send that link to your friends. It's a very useful website, and I highly recommend that if you're going to be building a PC, that you go ahead and utilize this website first. So that way you make sure that you're spending the right amount of money, that you're keeping all your parts within your budget, and then everything's fully compatible with each other. That just about wraps up this little walkthrough video. This is one of the most useful tools that I use for PC building, and I think it's something that a lot of people should use more when they're putting together a PC build. So I wanted to make sure that I made this video to show you guys how you can utilize it to fit your needs. I hope you guys found the video helpful, and if you did, please be sure to like, share, and comment down below. Dislike if you thought the video was maybe too long. I apologize for that. I'm trying to get better with shortening the length of the videos. Also, in the description down below, there will be links to my various social media pages as well as my Twitch page, and I stream twice a week. You can go there, and there'll be a link to my Hobbyist PC's Discord down there as well. You can jump in and get in on the tech discussions. You can ask people in the community for help with your build, or you can actually post your PC part picker list in there, and then people will go in there, they will look through it, and they'll give you their opinions on it. They might even make some adjustments for you. Also, there'll be a link to the merch page down below if you want to buy coffee mugs and t-shirts with the Hobbyist PC's logo on it down there. And of course, if you want to stay updated to everything going on in the Hobbyist PC's community, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button and then the bell icon for notifications to be notified anytime that we update to the channel. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching. Have a pleasant day, everyone.